As the 2024 presidential election heats up, it is time to look at the best case scenario for Donald Trump. What is up, people of the internet? It is me, Real American, back again with a new video, and today it is time to talk about the 2024 presidential election because most people would agree that as of now, Donald Trump is the favorite to win the presidency, and you can look at virtually every other metric and it backs it up. Whether it's Biden's approval rating, whether it's the fact Trump is leading the polls the first time ever, basically every metric agrees, yeah, Trump is the current favorite, and that's why most people agree, yeah, Trump is probably going to win this November. But there's been many questions surrounding this race based on the fact that we really don't know how big of a victory Trump would potentially get. So I decided, you know what? We should look at the best case scenario for Donald Trump. Not an official prediction. This is if the stars align, what is the best case scenario for Donald Trump? Now, before we continue with today's video, I hope you enjoy these type of videos. If you do, smash the like button down below, subscribe, share with your friends, hit that little bell, follow the social media accounts in the description down below, and of course, join the channel today. Again, folks, all support is greatly appreciated, and yeah. Now, I do want to be clear that this is not an official prediction. People got to understand that this is a best case scenario. Like the stars align. Everything goes perfectly for Trump the next couple of months. And even then, this map is not likely to occur. It's just very unlikely. You need everything to go right. Now, before we even discuss the state-by-state map, we got to look at the national popular vote because we got to figure out, all right, in a best-case scenario, how much is Trump winning the national vote by? Now, the current polling has Trump up by a point. As of now, again, things could theoretically change. You could see this polling number maybe swinging like 15 points towards Biden in 2 months. It's possible, I guess. But as of now, Trump currently has a 1-point lead over Biden at the national level. That's a 5-point swing from 2020. Now, what would a best case scenario be? Some people might argue, well, maybe Trump plus 10. That's not going to happen. You know, Trump plus 10 is just not possible. You know, it's just not going to happen. But luckily, we do got a couple polls in the RCP aggregate that shows what appears to be Trump's ceiling. And the recent polls from Harvard, Harris, and CNN, it has Trump winning by 4 to 6 points. All right, it seems like that's the best case scenario based on the recent poll in the past couple of weeks. That appears to be kind of the ceiling for Trump, like a 4 to 6 point victory. So to give Biden the benefit of the doubt, we're going to say Trump plus 4, which is the complete opposite of 2020, mind you, is the best case scenario for Trump. That's an 8-point swing from 2020. Again, this is if the stars align, everything goes perfectly. I think Trump plus 4, maybe Trump plus 5, maybe even 6 is, I guess, the best case scenario. But to give Biden the benefit of the doubt, let's assume the Harvard-Harris poll is spot on and Trump's winning by 4. And this includes RFK, this includes Jill Stein, etc. We're just going to assume Trump wins the popular vote by around 4 points. And you could argue maybe it's slightly more, but just to be, I guess, friendly to Biden, we're assuming Trump plus 4 is the best case scenario. So let's get into it. Let us start with the safe Republican states. Obviously, these states are, you know, they're going to Republican. There's no way a state like Arkansas is going to vote Democrat. Now, a bunch of Democrats might claim that it's possible for South Carolina to flip, but in a Trump plus 4 environment, it's just not going to happen. You know, there's no mathematical pathway for it to occur. And of course, Maine's second. Now, for Biden, I'm assuming that he wins California. I just don't see how he doesn't. It's a state that he won by like 30 points in 2020. It's not going to be possible for Trump to win. Hawaii would be safe Democrat. Again, it could be closer, but I just don't see how it's possible for it to be within 10. Maryland would be Democrat, you know, DC and Delaware. Now, Delaware, funny enough, was actually almost within 10 points back in 2016. People forget that. The reason that it voted for the Democrats so much in 2020 was because of Biden. Him being on the ticket helped Democrats in the state. He won it by like 19 points. Clinton won it by like 12. It was a pathetic victory. States like Connecticut, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, Vermont, and Maine's first would all be safe Democrat. No argument about it. Now, we do have more safe states on both sides. On the Republican side, you got Iowa, Ohio, Texas, and Florida. I mean, there's no argument about it. Ohio voted for Trump by 8. Same thing with Iowa. Florida is shifting so far to the right that even if Trump lost by 1 at the national level, Trump would still probably win Florida by over like 10 points either way. So there's no question about it. And Texas, well, he won by over 6 in 2020. If he's doing 10 points better at the national level, there's just no way in hell it's not over 10 points for Trump. It's just impossible at that point. Well, I should say impossible. It's just so unlikely that it's just not going to happen. Now, on the Democrat side, we do got a couple other safe states. Colorado would be one. Now, I know. If Trump is doing 10 points better at the national level, how the hell is he not within 10 points in Colorado? Put it simply, there has been so many Democrats moving to Colorado. You think Democrats are moving to Texas? You're actually wrong. Most of them are actually moving to Colorado. And we saw this in 2022. The electable candidates, or the electable ones, they did worse than Trump in Colorado. That should tell you everything about where the state is going. I just don't see how Trump gets within 10 points, even in a best case scenario. I just think this state is gone for Republicans, no matter what you do. I really think it is the next California. It's that bad. Now, I can see the argument of, well, maybe with turnout being low enough in Denver, maybe Trump gets within 10 points of the state. But even then, I just think there's too many people moving to Colorado. Plus, you got a bunch of quote-unquote Republicans that live in the state. It's a bad combination for Trump, and I really think even in a best-case scenario, Trump is going to get crushed in the state of Colorado. Now, you also got the state of Washington. Put it simply, Trump won it or lost it by 20 points back in 2020. He's not going to get it within 10, even in a best-case scenario. Is it possible? Maybe. I just don't see it happening. I really don't. A best-case scenario for Trump in Washington is lose it by like 12. But even then, that's maybe pushing it. Because just like Colorado, the voters in Washington are not going to be favorable for Trump, even if he does so much better. These are voters that are going to vote for Biden no matter what. Now, you do got a significant, progressive vote in Seattle that are pissed off about the war in Israel, but I just don't think it's enough to make the state within 10 points. So those are the other states that you can say they're going to go safe for their parties. Now that we got the states out of the way that you know for a fact are going to vote for their parties by over 10 points, let us start with the state of Oregon. Now, this is slightly to the right of Washington. The problem is Biden still won it by over 16 points. It's a very Democrat state. Now, you do got Portland, which has a lot of progressives that are going to boycott Biden, which is going to help Trump a little bit. Either way, even in the actual prediction, I think Trump will do slightly better in Oregon just because there's going to be a protest vote. Same thing in Washington. The problem is Trump really going to do 15 points better in Oregon when these voters are the ones that, while there's some that are going to be boycotting Biden and maybe voting for Jill Stein and Cornel West, I don't think they're the type of voters to flip on Biden in large enough numbers. So while I do think it will be within 10 points, I still think Biden wins it by like 6 to 7 points. Best case scenario for Trump. More than likely, he's going to win it by over 10. State of Nevada, Trump's going to win. There's no question about it. He's going to win it by 3 to 4 points in a best case scenario. But there is the caveat that maybe Trump does even better here because the Democratic voter in Nevada, I could see flipping much more easily than the ones in Oregon and Washington. Because in Nevada, you have a lot of Hispanic voters that vote Democrat. And that's one of Trump's best polling groups compared to 2020. And if he really is doing that much better with Hispanics, which in this scenario, we assume that's the case, we could see a much bigger shift to the right in the state of Nevada. But we're just going to say for now, Trump wins Nevada by around 3 to 4 points. And the same thing goes with Arizona, though I will say you could argue maybe it's even a Trump plus 5 or 6 state. You could argue that, but I think Trump plus 4, maybe 5, is his best case scenario in Arizona. A couple points better than 2016, but it's not safe. New Mexico is the one state that is extremely hard to predict, especially in a best case scenario, because you can argue that with the demographics of New Mexico, in a best case scenario, Trump is doing 10 points better at the national level. That must mean he does a lot better with Hispanic voters, which, take a guess which voter is prevalent in New Mexico. Hispanics. But at the same time, there are a bunch of white liberals in New Mexico that really prevent it from being a competitive state. That's the one thing about New Mexico that's kind of bizarre. There are a bunch of white liberals that, funny enough, keep the state fairly Democrat. If it wasn't for them, I could see New Mexico, even in, an actual prediction, being much more competitive. But with the demographics in New Mexico, I'm going to have to say in a best case scenario, it's probably leaning Democrat, maybe just likely. I don't know. This is the one state that you're either going to see a huge swing in the right in 2024, or you're going to see no change at all. It's one of those states that you don't really know. The demographics kind of indicate it could go both ways. But I do think it would be within 10 points, obviously. If Trump is doing 8, 10 points better at the national level, yeah, I would assume Trump gets within 10 points, maybe within 5 in New Mexico. Now, Nebraska's second is shifting to the left, but I do think in a best case scenario, Trump would carry it by 2 to 3 points. Now we reach the state of Minnesota. This is going to be the first one that you could probably guess is going to be a significant flip for Trump. I guess Nebraska's second's big also, but Minnesota in a Trump plus 4 electorate would vote for Trump. They're going to vote for him in a best case scenario. Now, I think it's going to be close either way, but in a best case scenario, I would assume Trump does win Minnesota. He lost it by around 7 points. But back in 2016, he nearly won it. And that was because there was a significant third-party vote share in Minnesota. And this cycle, we're assuming that RFK and Jill Stein and Cornel West, they all get some kind of significant vote share. Not just, 5 votes. That's a perfect combination for Trump in Minnesota. Now, as for the 3 other Rust Belt states, in a best-case scenario, he's winning all 3 of them by over 5 points. Now, Illinois, this is the one state in the Midwest that will still vote for Biden. I mean, it's a Biden plus 17 state. But in a best case scenario, I could see it being within 10 points for Trump. Georgia and North Carolina would both vote for Trump by over 5. I could see North Carolina in a best case scenario maybe even being safe, which I know, that's maybe pushing it. Like, he won it by just 1 point in 2020. But the demographics of North Carolina, you could possibly see a 10-point swing in a best-case scenario. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but you could argue maybe in a best-case scenario, Trump does 9 to 10 points better in North Carolina. As for Georgia, the polling has him up by just over 2 to 3 points right now. If he really wins the popular vote by 4, yeah, in a state that he lost by, 0.2%, I could see him winning by over 5 points. He won it by 5 points back in 2016. It's not crazy. Now, as for Virginia, I think Trump would still lose it in a best-case scenario, but it would be closer than it was back in 2016, which he lost it by around 3 to 4 points, I think it was. Back in 2020, he lost it by over 10. And we know for a fact that it appears that Republicans are seeing some kind of bounce back in Virginia. Now, does that mean Trump's gonna win it? No. And even in a best case scenario, I think he loses it. But if he loses it by just 2 to 3 points, that's the best performance for any Republican at the presidential level since what? George Bush? That would be impressive. And I think that it would show the Republicans still have some kind of life in Virginia. Now, granted, this is assuming Trump won by 4, but if he can do that good in Virginia, which you could argue is one of the more anti-Trump states in the country, well, maybe that's a sign that Republicans do got a shot down the line in Virginia. New Hampshire would probably be one of the closest races of the night, if not the closest. I think it comes down to the wire. It comes down to maybe like a couple hundred votes. But in a best case scenario, I think Trump would barely win. I'm talking about, a 200 vote victory. Now, the problem for Trump in New Hampshire is a bunch of Democrats from Boston are moving to New Hampshire, and they're bringing their voting habits with them. Funny enough, however, the state northeast of them, which is actually a bit more Democrat, I think would vote to the right of New Hampshire. Maine. I think in a best case scenario, Trump would win Maine by like 2 points. The reason I say that, despite it being a Biden plus 9 state, is simple. The demographics in Maine, if Trump is doing 8 points better everywhere, I think would be much more prevalent in Maine. The demographics here are much more favorable for Trump than, say, New Hampshire. And you could argue that, well, maybe 2020 was just a one-off occurrence in Maine. Plus the limited polling we got in Maine, as of now, which again, this is polling that is so scarce that you don't really have a trend. The polls, however, show that Trump's actually ahead in Maine, or just slightly down. So it's not unreasonable to think that in a best case scenario, maybe Trump does, in fact, win the state of Maine. Now, you may notice there are 2 more states remaining, New York and New Jersey. I want to be clear about one thing. This is not a prediction. I've said this multiple times. This is a best case scenario. Now, if Trump wins by 4, I think Biden would win New York and New Jersey by over 10 points. Now, some of you might be asking yourselves, but wait, didn't Lee Zeldin only lose by 6? Yes, that's a fair point. The problem is, I have questions about the coalition Zeldin had. Can Trump replicate that to such an extreme level in a presidential year? Even in a best case scenario, I just don't see that happening. But while I think Biden does win both these states by over 10, even in a best case scenario, I think they're just barely over 10. We're not talking about, a 15-point victory. We're talking about Biden by 10.1, barely above 10 points. It's a bit misleading, but I do think, though, in a best case scenario, Biden would still carry both of those states, though by pathetic margins for Democrat standards. And this, folks, is the best case scenario for Trump, which the Electoral College for Trump seems a bit low, but the reality is that's the map. That's a current map we got in the year of 2024. It's not like the 1980s where Reagan can win every state by the same margin. You don't got that anymore. You have a different type of electorate. It's not possible to win every single state. And that's why a best case scenario, even for Trump, is not even a Obama 2008 landslide. It's not even Obama 2012 in terms of electoral votes. It's still much more than Trump got in 2016, but it's not 380. Anyways, folks, thank you so much for watching. If you guys did enjoy this video, smash the like button down below, subscribe, share with your friends, hit that little bell, follow the social media accounts in the description down below, and of course, join the channel today. Godspeed to all of you.